You're listening to the Flickcast, a podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and joining me, Joe Dilworth. Hey, Joe, what's happening?
Oh, sorry. We're doing a show. I was busy putting on some Drakkar to go out tonight. So
A little bit of flat bottom Viking boat. That's what you want.
yes, I want to smell like a flat. Sorry, I can't let that go. We were talking before the show, and somehow we ended up getting onto the subject of a fragrance from our youth, Drakkar Noir, and apparently it's named after a flat bottom Viking boat. I had no idea, and so I guess that's what you smell like when you wear it.
Invoke the virile charms of the Vikings, which I
because they were charming. They were a charming lot.
They were
like the Roman legions. They were charming.
Yeah. If you've ever seen that show Vikings on the History Channel, they look charming. You can see why.
It's such a charming show. It's
why the ladies responded to the Vikings showing up. It was like, oh, good, the Vikings are here. The men have arrived, and they smell wonderful. So I don't get that. We did a lot of stupid things in the 80s and 90s that we don't necessarily understand now.
No, and I'm sure we'll reflect back on some of our things from today and go, what the hell? But yes. There were some real winners from back in the 80s and 90s. So.
But that's not important right now. What's important is we have a show about stuff nerds love. And on this episode of the Flickcast, we're going to talk about Star Trek Disco finale. We're going to discuss the Miss Marvel trailer. And we're going to talk about Newkirk. Not to be confused with the city in Ohio or wherever it is in Kentucky.
Or Classic Kirk. Yeah.
Or Classic Kirk. Yeah, it's Newkirk or Classic Kirk. I'm sorry. Newkirk is in... anyway, it doesn't matter. It's a city. Also a person, apparently. So, yeah, we're going to get to that. And, of course, we're going to get into picks and whatever else. But should we just jump into it? Or we could just talk about Drakkar some more. That's fine, too.
We could.
Anyway, so do you want to go to... I'm sure people love to hear about Cologne, but maybe we should move on. Should we talk about disco? Or you know what? Let's just talk about... Let's get the 100-pound elephant, the whatever, out of the room and talk about Newkirk, shall we?
Let's get the Federation captain in the room out of the way. No, I don't know. Yeah, let's talk about Newkirk.
All right, so as we predicted last week, they have announced casting of James Tiberius Kirk for the new Strange New Worlds show, but apparently he's only going to start to appear in the second season, and we don't know a lot about what he will be doing, but as everyone who knows anything about Star Trek knows, he takes the Enterprise over or becomes captain of the Enterprise either after Pike has his problems or whatever, but something does have to happen to Captain Pike, and Kirk becomes captain of the Enterprise, and history follows. But there's a new actor playing Kirk. All the pictures we've seen of him so far, he's wearing the yellow shirt and the captain's bars on his whatever, and so we don't know. But it's kind of interesting. So he will also be appearing. So I guess since that happened, will we see everyone being cast now? I don't know. But what do you think about the new Kirk?
I think it's good casting. I think he looks Kirkish. I've learned, having grown up over the years with people like Michael Keaton being cast as Batman, and then later Chris Pine as another new Kirk. I think much like you, I've learned don't judge the casting by the PR. Actually, watch it and see, because you never know. So no, I'm totally fine with it. I kind of figured at some point in the series, if it went on for a number of years, we would get Kirk showing up. I'm surprised that he's showing up as early. I know the actor has been. There's been pictures of him on set, or at least filming with the other Star Trek characters for the second season of Strange New Worlds. So I kind of figured that's why they were like, you know what, there's enough going on around this.
We better say something.
Might as well just announce it. But the announcement brings up a whole bunch of questions, obviously, because as you said, the primary picture they've released of him, the PR picture has him sitting in a captain's chair wearing captain stripes on his uniform. So, and they release no information about what his involvement is in the show and things like that. So is it, do we get a flash forward? Is there time travel involved? Maybe not. Because at that point in time, when this show takes place, Kirk is not a captain. He's on the Farragut,
No,
I believe, and
Farragut.
he's
Yes.
yeah. So what happens? Are they accelerating the time frame? Are they like, you know what? Maybe Anson Mount's like, yeah, I think I only want to do a year of this, and he's out, and the the second season is going to be the first year of Kirk as captain. Who knows? I mean, it brings up a lot of questions, and I'm
It does.
sure as even though we were mocking marketing and PR before the show, that's what you want with your announcements. You want people to go, "Oh, what is this? What's going on? I want to find out more." Right? So, mission accomplished
Or as
there.
in today's climate, or in the internet world, you want people to be upset and mock it and be pissed
Well,
off
there's
that
already
they say
people
anything.
that are like, yeah, it's the worst thing ever. They've screwed up continuity and blah, blah. I'm like, it's just a picture. They didn't mess up anything.
Well, yeah,
Calm
I mean,
down.
if you're gonna announce a guy playing Captain Kirk, that's how you stage the publicity photo, right? You put him in the
Right,
captain's
right.
uniform and you put him in the fucking chair and you go, "Here's Captain Kirk." It's not Captain Kirk standing on a planet, or you maybe pose him next to a Gorn or something so you get the picture. But it's
Right.
like, this is the captain of the Enterprise. Eventually, what he's going to do in the new show, we're not going to tell you yet. Will he? Will there be a convergence of timelines? Because I mean, Star Trek is not shy about time travel. Or there's been
No.
many episodes where 4 or 5 Enterprises show up, and and Tasha
Right,
Yar is still
right.
alive in this one, and that Next Generation shit. But so who knows? I'm not going to get upset about about one picture. I mean, and the guy's got to play Kirk eventually. It
No.
can't be Chris. It can't be Chris Pine. Pine's not going to play Kirk maybe one more time. Although, as we talked about before, it was a surprise to him. I'm playing this character again. Oh, how exciting! Someone should have
Right.
told me. But this guy Paul Wesley is his name, who has been cast. I think looks a lot like a young Shatner. In fact,
Yeah.
there's even a photo circulating of him and Shatner on an airplane together. I mean, obviously Shatner's a lot older, but than he is. But
Well,
what
yeah.
shocked me is Paul Wesley's almost 40. He looks like a kid, but he's like almost 40, which is
Right.
interesting. So
Right.
I think he looks great. I think I'm going to give him a shot and see what happens. I've enjoyed all the new Star Trek shows, Discovery and everything, and I think and Picard, of course. So I'm going to give it a chance. And I like Anson Mount. I don't know that. I don't feel like they're gonna do Anson Mount dirty. You know what I mean? I think this has got to be some kind of thing where he comes in a sort of alternate timeline reality thing, or somehow the timeline gets changed, or whatever. Because look what they're doing with Picard. I mean, they're basically messing up
Right.
everything.
Right. Yeah.
And you can always bring it back together. So one photo is not gonna tell an entire story. I mean, it can, but it's not going to tell an entire story in this case. And
No.
also, like you said, will we see? Because Uhura was already in the show. Will we see everybody come back? Will Scotty be back in the show? Will they recast
Right.
everybody? Or I said
Yeah.
recast, even though that's not what it is. Will they cast everybody for this new continuity? And does this
Yeah.
have anything
I
to do
mean, we got
with the
Spock and Uhura on the show, like you said. We already got Spock and
Yeah.
Uhura.
Now we have
You
Kirk, so
know,
we're gonna have Sulu. We're gonna have everybody.
what would be
Scotty
so? It'd be
and
interesting if they spend like 5 years building to Kirk taking over the Enterprise, and then after 5 years, they're like,
yep,
"Yeah, we're done with the show, and now it's going to be a Kirk show." I
yeah.
don't know, but
Well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
yeah,
Because you're building on, you have the prequel to OG Star Trek, right? With Strange
yep,
New Worlds. You do that for several years and see how that goes. In the meantime, you pepper in these new characters, new old characters, and then you can launch a new show, which is basically Star Trek, the original series again. And why
right,
not do that? Because it's a new generation, and you've already got the guy playing Spock. I mean, you've already got half the cast. You might as well just go forward with the show. And CBS, Paramount, whatever, are not stupid. They know what they have, and maybe
yeah,
this has been the plan all along. It's like, we're going to get back to the exploration shows, and we're going to give you the characters that you used to like, and we're going to whatever, and get it back, because Pike can't be captain forever, as we know. So
well, he's got a
I'm
countdown, built in, so yeah,
he does, or unless that's a different timeline too, because where does the Kelvin timeline fit in? Is that canon, or is it original Star Trek? Because in the movies, they don't meet the same way, and everything doesn't happen exactly the same way. So why is this show following the exact canon? And as they establish in
because they said
Discovery,
it
there's different.
does.
Well, okay, they said it does, but what does that mean? I mean, does it? Because
It
anyway, so
doesn't
that's what I'm saying. I
matter.
think
Just enjoy the stories. Sorry.
exactly. That's
I
exactly right. It doesn't
subliminally put
matter.
that in there. It doesn't matter. I just don't understand sitting there each episode going, how does this fit into the other 700 hours of stuff that I've seen? And well, that's blue instead of green. That destroys everything. It's like, no, it doesn't. So
Well,
anyway,
I think
I don't want to
I
get
don't
into
think
that
there's
again.
any.
But
Well, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that though. In trying to figure out how things fit together, that's cool. I think that's fun. Sometimes it's fun to figure. Oh, well, this guy did this. It helps you. I think in some ways immerse yourself in the history and the story to maybe be more invested in the characters and everything. When it becomes a problem is if that makes you angry when they don't do it the way you think it should have
right,
been done. That's different, I think, at least for me. I would love to find out how this all fits together because I think it's like a big puzzle and it's fun. Like all the Marvel
yeah,
films, how do these characters fit? You know, continuity is hard. And if they're going to keep this stuff being, continuity with all the old shows and everything, it's almost impossible to do that because, like you said, there's so many hours of TV and so
right,
many hours of movies and so many hours. It's not going to work all together perfectly. Just like Marvel doesn't work together perfectly. There's definitely some continuity issues, but I think it's fun to try to figure it out, and I think of it as a big sandbox to play in. Will it
oh no, yeah,
will it destroy my enjoyment of the show? No, of course not. But
no, I'm
it's
totally
fun
with you.
to
I I like continuity from the world building aspect, and that it makes a realistic expansive world and a universe that these stories take place in. But again, to me, the stories are important, and I don't. It's like it. Well, we're going to tell this story because it's going to be great for the character and for the universe that we have, but it might contradict something. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't like continuity in canon, whatever the hell that is, standing in the way of a really good story. I mean, that's the same thing with. That's kind of when I went into reading the Star Trek novels, right? Because it was obvious that the Star Trek novels, there was things in there that were later contradicted by what we saw on screen, but didn't care. I still, I guess we've talked about this. Splinter of the Mind's Eye is a great Star Wars example. Everything in that book is like completely contradicted by what we saw even in the very next movie and the movies after that. But I still think it's a great story. It's another story with some of my favorite characters. So I'm okay with that. It's like you said, it's getting into the being angry and the people making this are stupid and I'm going to boycott and this should all burn to the ground. It's like, dude, it's just made up stuff. Calm down, right? So
well,
there
that
are
at
more
the end of the
things
day,
to get
yeah,
that
it's
kind of anger at.
well, I think that there's a danger of being too invested in something and having it be too much of you take too much of an ownership into something that you didn't create, and then
Right.
that's where the problems start. That's why people get angry, and that's why, you know, I say fanboys because it's usually males who are like this. I'm
Yes.
sure there's other people who feel the same way but aren't quite as vocal. But it's always like there's always for the most part, it's comic book guy in Simpsons is basically a prime example of this.
Yes.
It's just I'm an angry white person, and again I don't want to reduce it to stereotypes, but it kind of is a stereotype in some ways. So it's just I want to be angry about something, and this is the thing that I'm so passionate about that it's obsession at this point, and it makes me mad when they don't do it the way I thought that it should be done. And you know what? Opinions are fine. You can have an opinion,
Sure.
and that's great
Absolutely.
as long as you don't try to hurt other people with your opinion and become a total dick about it. Then fine, you can hate something and not watch it. It's fine. I just like it because to me, having been basically with Star Trek since quote unquote the beginning, almost. I mean, I didn't watch the show when it originally ran, but almost when it originally ran, like in the first section of reruns of the original series when I was a kid, and it meant a lot to me, and it still does. But I'm just glad that they keep telling stories, and I'm glad that they keep
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
respectful to what came before. Not to the point of we have to, do everything that happened before, but just like we have to acknowledge that this stuff existed, and we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have a job if this didn't happen before. If all these people
Well,
hadn't done this, so we have to respect that. But
yeah. Well, I mean, look at
anyway,
it this way too. I mean, we didn't know anything from the second pilot of Star Trek, and then going forward, we don't know anything about Kirk and his career prior to that, other than like some things that have been said. I mean, there's been books and stuff like that, but if you don't hold those as canon or continuity, then that isn't what happened. There's been things that he said, but we we all say we all say things about what we did in previous jobs, but they're very much kind of condensed and all that. To me, I'm like, oh, so now we're actually getting to see the details and what actually happened, as opposed to what just some characters have said have happened. Same thing with like Burnham being Spock's sister. They're like, he never said anything about his sister. It's like, right, which makes this to me even more interesting, because it's like, so how come he never did talk about her? There's got to be something there. Let's watch this and see. And this is a character obviously affected him, yet he never mentioned her later. So what happened? And we got an explanation for that. Same thing with like, well, why is Kirk a captain before we thought he was a captain? Well, there's a story there. Let's go check that out and see what it is.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Well, and the thing is, on a TV show or on a movie, that's what I always liked about something like Star Trek, is they start in the middle of the show. Kirk is already established. Everybody's already going. Their mission's already going. You don't get an origin of why they all got together like you do in the movies, because that's a movie thing to do. It's like, we have to see how these guys all got together, and how did they become the crew they are, which is fine. That's a way to do it too. But that's always struck me as more of like an executive note. Like, we need to see them. Like, we need to see Batman's origin. It's like, we don't need to see the fucking pearls again. We know he's Batman. And that's one thing that people are saying is so great about this latest Batman movie, which we're going to talk about eventually, I'm sure. That it just starts with him being Batman. We don't need to see why he becomes Batman. Or like Spider-Man. That's what I loved about Spider-Man. The way they're doing it now with Tom Holland, it's like, he's already Spider-Man. And then he never even mentions the thing until this last movie. It was like, yeah, ever since I got bitten by that spider. That's it. That's all we need. Yeah. Everyone knows the fucking origin of Spider-Man. We don't need to see it again. And it's like Star Trek. We know where Kirk comes from. He's the captain of the Enterprise. We don't need to know why, but he does smatter in a few choice details, like, when he's talking to Gary, or he's talking to his friends, where it's like, yeah, you aimed that little nurse at me, I almost married her, that kind of thing. That's Carol Marcus. We don't know.
Right, exactly.
Like the stuff like that. We don't need to know everyone's. Maybe Spock talked about his sister to Kirk. But
we just didn't see it. Yeah. Right.
You're not following. You don't follow them around 24/7, like when they're in the bathroom and stuff. It's a TV show. We don't have time to sit around and have conversations necessarily about our history. And maybe Spock was just, they explain it in Disco why he doesn't talk about it. So Vulcans are not exactly. They don't really share their personal lives that much.
Well, and you don't like every work day when you go to work in the morning, you don't recount your history to your coworkers, right? So you're right.
If you remember, folks, I grew up in Iowa. I only work in outer space. I mean,
how come Spock never mentioned his sister? Anybody on the show? It's like, he probably did. We just didn't see it. I mean, at that point, it may have been like, they got close enough as friends that he's like, I've carried this burden forever, and I want to share it with my best friend, right? So it may, but
I mean, Kirk was
and any number of other things,
friend, yeah. But it's not something unless it's story driven. It's like when Spock needs to go get a girlfriend after 7 years, in a muck time. It's just like, that's something that's important. Now Spock he's getting married. What? His family comes from this. Then you need to know. That's the point where you need to know Spock's history. You don't need to know everything about it. But again, that said, if they want to go through Pike and all this other stuff, and then build up to when Kirk becomes captain and all that, and build a whole series on that, that's great. We've never seen that. That sounds interesting to me. So let's do it, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We don't know the details. I mean, things I've told you about my jobs in the past are very, very, like I said, condensed and very like one-line stuff. If you went back and were to go back in time and see the details and see it unfold, it would give you a different perspective, and you'd be like, oh, well, that's not quite the way he said, and that's kind of interesting, right? And the same thing with this, in my mind. It's like, we don't know. Everyone's like, oh, they never mentioned having a Klingon war in the original series. It's like, it's not like they're going to start every episode with, wow, we're past that Klingon war, that was something else, right? So
yeah, that's a real bummer.
Yeah, so
that's true.
Like,
what else? What else is funny too is Kirk. I mean, let's just take him as an example. Kirk is the kind of person I feel like who would gloss over any negatives in his past. He kind of would maybe
Right.
I don't want to say lie, but he's gonna paint himself in the most positive light because he's kind of in a way, kind of a bullshitter a little bit. He's kind of a bravado kind of dude. I don't like the no win
Yeah.
scenario. I'm going to reprogram the simulator, blah, blah, blah. But he's not going to lead with that. It's like, one time I beat the Kobayashi Maru. Did I mention that to you? I don't know.
Right.
So it's like, it doesn't come up, but then he's like, and I'll be, people give William Shatner crap about his acting, but in that scene where he's talking about Kobayashi Maru in Wrath of Khan, I'm like, that is some good acting. He's like, I don't like to lose. And you believe him. But also it's
Yes,
because
exactly.
he's been Kirk for so long. But that is everything you need to know about James T. Kirk. I don't like to lose. And
Yeah.
I'll do
Well,
or
I
say
mean,
whatever the fuck I have to say to make sure that doesn't happen. And
he
so
faced that and showed that in the original series in one of the first episodes that aired, Corbomite maneuver. He made up Corbomite
yeah.
that was going to
Yeah.
blow up everybody. He totally bluffed his way through that, and that was like
Yeah.
totally turning around a no-win scenario right there. It's like, well, duh, of course he doesn't like to lose. He's been showing us that for all this time.
And I don't know that you become that successful. I mean, as a captain of a starship, exploring the galaxy, you have to have, bullshit ability a little bit to inspire.
Yeah.
I mean, he inspires fanatical loyalty from the crew, and he's a great leader because he pulls off miracles, but he has a lot of help. I mean, from the crew and Scotty in particular, who always multiplies his repair or estimates by,
Yes.
I'm a miracle
Exactly.
worker, Captain. I love that. Those little bits. You didn't know that. Scotty was like, I need 30 minutes to recharge, to rebuild, restart the engines, and he always figures this shit out. But it's like Scotty's a
Right.
genius, and you don't really get the joke until later in one of the movies when he finally says, here's why I'm so good at my job because I bullshit you all the time.
Exactly. I mean, it's
Under
So
promise and over deliver. That's Scotty in a nutshell right there.
yeah. So to me, like Discovery, the first couple seasons of Discovery and Strange New Worlds are like, here's the stuff we've heard about as sound bites and as tall tales over drinks. Now we're going to get to see the details, and I'm like, I'm cool with that. I want to see that. It's like, oh yeah, so this isn't quite the way they told it to us, and that's okay because that's how things work, right? Again, like I keep saying, my tales of my past are going to be colored and told from my perspective, and how I want people to think about them and know those stories. That what actually happened is, in some cases, probably quite a bit different. See, I'm a bullshitter too, but some of the things are probably quite a
Yeah.
bit different, and probably even different than I would probably go back in time and see those and go, well, that's not really how I remember that. That's interesting. So to
Well,
me,
yeah,
that's the same
it's
thing with
actually
all the prequels.
it's a great point because memory is fallible too. It's like maybe Kirk doesn't
Yeah,
remember exactly how it went down. So he's been hit in the head a few times. Maybe he's got some concussions going on.
exactly,
Got some
exactly.
concussion memory loss. He can't see later hardly. So anyway, I just it's hard to condemn. I have a hard time condemning something from just a photo for sure. But I'm kind of interested. Now that we're talking about it, I'm getting more excited to see kind of
Yeah,
like a Kirk origin story in a way. It's like, how does he become captain of the Enterprise? Because they have Pike now. How does Pike do this? And what happens with him? And now
right.
it's like, well, now what is Kirk? What's up with Captain Kirk and what's up with, I mean, kind of already got that in the Abrams Star Trek. How do they all get together? But that's a different timeline, as they've said. So, not that matters, like you said, but it's just now this will be more in continuity, quote unquote, with original Star Trek and everything. And we'll see what happens. But
Well,
it's cool.
like in
I would watch
the
another Star Trek show.
yeah,
Yeah.
like in the movies, are they going to show us Pike mentoring Kirk in the show? There's not anything to contradict what came later. And in fact, in the Menagerie, I mean, he talks quite a lot about Pike in a good way.
Yeah.
It's more so Spock, but it's I don't know. I'm on
Yeah.
board,
I
and
always got
again, I
I
want to
always
see
got
the
the
details.
impression I always got the impression that Spock was super loyal to Pike because he was his first officer on the Enterprise
Yeah,
in their original missions, and then Kirk took over the Enterprise and inherited Spock basically as the first officer and kept him
yeah,
on. But I don't know that Pike and Kirk had that much of a relationship. I mean, maybe just with mutual respect as a guy who did the thing that Kirk wants to do, which is go on a 5-year mission and be a hero and whatever. You know,
Well, and we'll get
meet
to
chicks,
see why
meet space
Spock is.
girls.
Yeah, we'll get to see why Spock is so loyal to Pike. I mean, already from the
Yeah,
second season of Discovery, he helped him with his sister, and they have that unknown knowledge of Discovery that they share.
right.
So they're bonded. And so to me, that adds even more layer to what Spock does later. Same thing with the whole rift between Spock and his dad. The whole thing that went on with Burnham and Spock and the Science Academy and all this kind of stuff, that adds like so much more layer to that, other than it being, oh well, he decided to go to Starfleet, so that's why we don't talk. It's like there's this whole unspoken thing that they can't talk about and can't tell other characters, that adds even more depth to it. It's like, oh, so I get it now, so that's why it's that serious. That's kind of cool,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
I
definitely,
like
definitely.
finding these things out and getting these details. So anyway.
Well, yeah, I like the fact, like we were talking about, paying their, honoring and paying respects to the old series. It's You're exactly right. It's like, why? Because Spock basically risks his career and his life to help Pike later on in original Star Trek. And
Right.
why does he do that? You don't really They don't really ever establish why he does it. He just does it, and you just accept it because Leonard Nimoy is a great actor. But it's like,
Right.
this guy would do anything for this person, but why, right? And now maybe we'll see how their relationship builds up, and then he ends up feeling that way about Kirk because
Right.
he will do whatever. I kind of feel like his relationship with Kirk is different in some ways, because like there's a scene in that episode where what's her face's character says, you at his side where you've always been. It's like,
Right.
they always are supposed to be together. That's there, and Kirk later on risks his entire life and career to save Spock. Right? He's like, I'm going
Right.
anyway. Fuck it. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
take his Katra back to Vulcan or whatever we're gonna do. So that's the kind of relationship they have. But it'll be interesting to see how that develops with Spock and Pike. I think that's cool. And because what happens, kind of have some idea what happens in the original series between Kirk and Spock, and what happens with
Yeah. Yeah.
the menagerie and all that stuff. It'll be fun to see that. But there's so many more, even if it's just a 5-year adventure. I mean, the original series only went 3 seasons, right? So they have so
Right.
many more
Exactly.
stories to tell. So it's going to be cool if they do that. I think they will, and I'm very interested to see who they get for all the rest of the characters they haven't cast yet. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm definitely on board.
Anyway, so
Speaking of
kudos
Discovery,
to Alex Kurtzman and company for all that stuff.
even though he's been fired again like 3 times since that
Yeah,
announcement.
yeah.
Anyway.
You always say that. You seem bitter about that. You don't want him to be fired.
I just think it's funny because they're like certain he's been removed and he's been fired, and I'm like, and then like 2 days later they're like, oh, they renewed his contract for 5 years. I'm like, what?
Well, he's basically the guy for Star Trek at CBS now. He's like, this is
Yes.
the Star Trek dude. So,
Yeah.
but you got Roddenberry. I mean, you got Eugene Roddenberry in there. You got the old school, keeping
Yes.
the legacy alive, and they're kind of I feel like they do. I feel like of all the like Abrams fans, and I'm sorry, all the Abrams sort of cronies, that Kurtzman was the biggest Star Trek fan. So I'm
Yeah,
happy to see
I
that.
agree.
I'm happy to see that he's sort of taken this under his wing, and
I-
Akiva Goldsman too, to a lesser extent. But I think that
I think I get the impression that Brian Fuller wanted to just go extreme in the differences and kind of off the rails, and that's why he probably exited Discovery early on. And that's why they were maybe like, yeah, I don't know that we want this guy at the helm. And Kurtzman was
Yeah.
like right there and was like, oh, I love Star Trek and I want to bring all this stuff together and do all these different things, but I still want it to be Star Trek. And I have a feeling
Yeah.
that Fuller was like, I just want it to be my own thing, and I want it to be, in Star Trek in name, but let's do something radically different with it. And everybody else was like,
maybe, yeah.
no. So,
I mean, maybe. I mean, Fuller is very a talented guy, and he's.
oh yeah, absolutely.
But you might be right. You might be right. Maybe he was trying to go a different direction. I mean, who knows? There were creative differences or whatever happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's personalities, as you know, and sometimes it's different visions for the show. But I feel like they would have known what his vision for the show was before they started, and so we'll never really know the whole story. But yeah,
No,
I'm
no.
I'm I'm happy. In Discovery, kind of, I guess you could say, started off a little bit rocky, but it has definitely, I think, corrected itself. If it had to correct itself, it's definitely found its way.
I
And
don't
this
think it
this
did,
past
but
season, well, I mean, it was anyway. It was a show trying to find itself a little bit, I think. And now in the last couple of seasons, especially, I feel like they're really hitting their stride. And this season was excellent and very Star Trek, in my opinion.
very Star Trek. Yeah, I mean, it was
Very
some of the most
strange new worlds, right? New
new life
civilizations.
and new. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Here's how we talk about this, and here's how we, communicate with a new race, and here's how we're going to use that 360 holodeck thing that we have for shooting. We're going to use it for everything. So
Well,
it's cool. I
definitely
mean,
the
I like the
resolution.
finale.
Yeah, definitely the resolution of this season was probably the most Star Trekist any Star Trek has ever trekked. Wait, I don't know, but it was
Wait, what?
extremely Star Trek. It wasn't like
Here's my
let's go blow everything up. It was like
Well,
let's figure this out.
Burnham isn't Kirk, so she's not going to go blow shit up. But here's my only, I don't know, it's not a negative, but it's just like it's sort of a not even a Deus Ex Machina, but and this is spoilers for the finale of Star Trek Discovery if you haven't seen it. But the thing about Book, right? It's like the guy is everything is set up for him to do what you got to do, Michael. Blah 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 blah. Everything is set up for him to sacrifice himself, and in a way, I feel like he kind of got robbed of that a little bit because we saw this transporter thing, we just happened to grab it, and here he is, he's back. It didn't bother me, but I was like, oh well, okay. But then he got to do his speech, and he got to whatever, and that's probably why he signed on for the entire show, just for that scene. Maybe, I don't know, but
Probably. I mean,
because that was a good scene. I mean, it was good, and he his head he lit up, and he's overcame his grief kind of, and made a connection with the new race and everything, and that's cool. But I kind of, some tiny part of me was like, okay, I guess you can't kill him off. Maybe he is.
but
Both. I
that's
don't know.
not what this show is. And I was thinking
No, I
about that
know.
because I was like, he's going to make the big sacrifice. And it's like, oh look, he did, but that's not what the show's about. And I think his ultimate I like the fact that the president of the Federation was like, here's all the laws he broke and all the things he did, but context and intent matter. And it's like that's
Yeah.
not only is that a huge statement on what's going on in the world today, but it's like, wow, you want to show a society, you want to show humanity or a federation that has um, uh, uh, gone forward and progressed. There you go. And so
Yeah.
he wasn't let
Context
free.
matters. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think his punishment is perfect because ultimately that's what he was trying to do is save everybody. So it's like now you get to help clean this up and help refugees and help save people. And it's like the I don't know. I just think that was a great way to punish him and hit the end for his character. Now he's not dead, so there's every chance and all likelihood that he's back next season.
Oh,
I
sure.
think they
Probably.
did an interesting thing of making us. They put a lot of characters in peril in this and made us think a lot of characters were going to die, and really only one did. and
Well,
maybe
maybe
he
he
activated that
did.
transporter before he died, and he's
Well,
he
he
can
did.
show up.
Yeah, he did
So
activate it. So
right. So is he may not be gone either. And it kind of played out the way we were kind of thinking that Tarka would come to his senses and make the big sacrifice play. But I still would have liked it if it was, Book was like, I'll be responsible for him and I'm going to get him home. And they took off. But it didn't happen. I mean, that still could happen down the road, but, you know,
yeah, no, I
uh,
was more talking about the character maybe got robbed of his sacrifice a little
oh,
bit,
I
but that
gotcha. I gotcha.
what I
Yeah.
mean. It's like here I'm gonna make the sacrifice. I'm gonna do what you got to do, Burnham, Michael. I'm gonna stop Tarka, and if you have to blow the ship up, it's worth it. But then they also had the general doing the same thing, and she survived too. I feel like she kind of got robbed too. It's like you did a really stupid thing, and you know she should have maybe gone down in flames to redeem herself a little bit. But I guess they're not so into that kind of redemption for guest stars or whatever.
Well, again, it's
So
as the show says, it's intent, and it's like I realize what I did, and I'm willing to make the sacrifice play
right.
to make this right. And for the show and what the story and what Star Trek is telling in this context, that's good enough, right? So, but yeah, I think a lot of characters got great moments. I mean, even like, Detmer being like, "I'm ready, Captain." She was like, "I'll do it. I'll make the sacrifice play." And I'm like,
Well,
"No, I don't want to lose that character."
Detmer's got a bit of a death wish, I think. She's a character they haven't really explored yet. She's got some hidden thing that she's trying to die, I think.
Yeah.
She was ready. And then she kind of got bummed out. It's like, I don't get to die?
Yeah, exactly. Damn it.
Did you see that in her eyes? She's like, I wanted to do this, and now I'm getting robbed of this opportunity. She's got some issues, but I just felt like, and that's not the kind of show this is, right? It's not, people aren't going to die heroically. It's a different kind of show. It's like we're all going to work on this together. We're all going to come together and save the world or the universe together. And we've still got work to do, as Stacey Abrams says.
Yes,
we're all going to do this, and that's fine. I just think one of the characters could have sacrificed themselves, maybe the general, or maybe Book. But yeah, Book is too popular, I think, probably to have him die. But then it's kind of a dick move in a way to put Michael through that kind of through the ringer. It's like she's grieving, and then but everything's fine. So
well, I think they needed that bit of grief too to help sell things to Species 10C that they needed to feel that kind of grief, and they're like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And it's like, "Yeah, I lost my one." And they're like, oh, well, no, you didn't. Here they are. And we're going to give you this back, and we're going to, stop destroying your people, and we're going to send you home, because we feel really terrible about what happened, and we're going to stop being isolated. So it was a very, very, very Star Trek resolution. Everybody, I thought, got some great moments, including Admiral Vance and even Tilly, who got to come back. And
I thought they were going to make out or something.
I just think it was great, them sitting there sharing a drink. It's like, well, we're going down with the ship. We're not, again, being Star Trek, we're not going to be like angsty about it. It's like, oh, hey, they both were in their way saying, I'm okay with this because I've had a good life and I've done some stuff. And turns out they didn't we all have to,
Yeah, we all have regrets. Like the Admiral's like, I should have spent more time with my daughter. That's the important thing. So it was more, I guess my point is this episode in particular felt like more of a, here's the message we're trying to give you. Here's the things that we're trying to teach you on this show. Everyone has to work together, and that's fine. And I still enjoyed the show, and it was still well done. But I think there was maybe someone could have, paid the ultimate price if they really wanted to. That's more dramatic. I guess I wanted more of a dramatic exit in some sense. Yeah, Tarka came around at the end. It's like, I'm sorry, I just,
on any other show, on most other shows, it would be like, well, we'll lose 3 characters in the finale, making the big plays. And I guess because of like the Cult of Walking Dead, it's like, oh, let's tune in and see who dies this week. And every other show, killing off characters in the first episode, or someone's got to die. I guess I'm tired of that, and I'm glad they didn't do that here. They, like I said, they even left the possibility that Tarka could be alive, and I'm like, I'm good with that, and I'm happier to have that more positive ending. I don't know, maybe it's just me,
and you're right, and that's not really Star Trek. Star Trek doesn't do that necessarily. The only time it's ever been done was, really, it was done in, when Spock goes in to fix the engines and, sacrifices himself so the Enterprise can get away. But
when they brought him back,
he comes back, right? And that didn't bother me. No, because he was only dead for one movie. So, and even at the end of
Star Trek. Star Trek just isn't really it's not a body count kind of story.
No, and that's fine. And I'm not looking for a body count, But
No,
they
I get
they
it.
kind of did it twice though, with the general and with Book. And it's
Yeah.
like, if you're not going to do it at all, why? I mean, they set it up both times. Like, if I don't come back, she even says that more than once. Like, well, you're not. You're of course you're going to come back. I thought
Right.
maybe she was more likely to go, go down with the ship than Book. But it's like no one did. But I'm thinking about old episodes of the original series. The original series is actually more cynical. I think a little bit. They did that a couple of times. Like there's the Doomsday Machine episode where the Admiral, the Commodore Weston
Oh
goes
yeah.
into
Yeah.
the Doomsday Machine to blow it up, and Kirk almost takes the ship in there to blow it up too, and was ready to sacrifice himself.
He's
But
like,
but they
no,
don't
let
do
me
that.
do it. Yeah.
Let me do it, yeah, because he already caused the death of all of his. He felt guilt. He already had caused the death of most. Well, he didn't really cause anything, but
Right.
because he couldn't fight the Doomsday. I mean, he beamed his crew down to the planet, and they all got blown up. But the planet got blown up. But it's like he sacrificed himself, but
Yeah.
he wasn't going to be a recurring character on the show. So that's why I thought the general might have had a chance to, to save lives by committing. But plus, she's a soldier, and soldiers do that and whatever. But then she
Yeah,
survived
but
too. So I don't
that's
know.
not the that's not the kind of show, and
No, I
I'm
know.
okay with that. And it
I
was
know.
nice to see, like old school of we're going to put all our characters in peril, but they're all going to make
Yeah.
it, and it was cool. And then, of course, we get the big the moment that's pissed off quite a few people, but
Yeah.
I thought was completely brilliant. We get the reveal of the president of Earth, played by Stacey Abrams, which was
Right. Yeah.
that was just a pretty amazing
Well,
moment. And then not only that, they gave her
it was cool.
lines, and
Yeah.
the conversation she has with Burnham was just pretty amazing, I thought.
We have a lot of work to do. Well, I mean, she's a huge Star Trek fan, so that
Yeah.
that made
And
that
she's
made
friends
sense
with
to.
Wilson Cruz as well. So I'm sure that played
Yeah.
into it. He's like, hey, we should get someone. I like the people that are like, oh, I can't believe they are doing stunt casting and everyone's showing pictures from all of Star Trek of, I
Yeah, they
can't believe
always do
Star
that.
Trek did stunt casting. It's like, they've always done that. So,
Well, I
no,
mean, the thing is, it's a show, and it's always been a show about. I mean, I guess you could say it's a liberal show because the end of the
yeah,
day, it celebrates diversity, and it celebrates everyone working together to solve problems and overcoming things. And it's an optimistic view of the future if we do the right thing. It's like, here's the things we can do to make sure that this other bad shit doesn't happen, but we have to do those things. So that to me is always been Star Trek, and this show is just trying to do the same thing. And like you said, they've always done. I mean, there's like other people even in Star Trek Discovery who are stunt casting. It's like, how is this a surprise? Some people are just upset because
it
people
was
gotta get
Stacey
upset about
Abrams.
stuff. It was Stacey
Well,
Abrams. Yeah, it's
I
like,
like that somebody on Twitter, and I apologize that I don't remember your name or your handle, said the TV series that featured the first interracial kiss in America got political this week. And it's like, well, yeah,
political,
because
really.
Star Trek has always been that. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
everybody forgets the episode with the guys that were black on one side and white on the other, and on the opposite sides. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, he's black on the left. You can't do that, So
Wow, yeah.
so it's always
Well,
been that way.
not to
It's
mention,
always been woke, whatever. Like they say, like that's a bad thing. I'm like, okay, but
well, it is. It's like people like to label stuff. If they don't understand it or it makes them angry or uncomfortable, they have to label it as something negative. But here's the thing: you talk about the interracial kiss with Uhura and Kirk. They actually kiss on the lips in the show, if you recall. I mean, it doesn't seem that they
yes,
seem very uncomfortable. Plus, they're being forced to do it. That was the caveat, right? They were being forced by
right,
those people with their mind powers. So Kirk didn't really want whatever. However you want to justify it, but he probably enjoyed it. Let's be honest.
he's Kirk.
I mean, Nichelle Nichols was a hottie back then, so I mean, it's just
Well,
like
yeah,
I'm not surprised, So, but the thing that always, I don't know if it's just if the way they're acting. You mentioned Wilson Cruz, like him and his I can't remember the actor's name, but the character they always seem kind of awkward with each other a little bit on the show, and I'm wondering if it's because he came back to life or whatever. They don't seem like they're. I don't know. They're exploring an interesting dynamic. I think it's more performance. I think they're doing something in the show, but
well, they both
yeah,
have
you have
stuff
those
going
characters.
on though, and
Yeah,
that's the
that's
thing.
true.
And
They
they're
have stuff going on.
trying
That's
to
true.
they're kind of trying to find this season, and it seemed to be the common theme amongst all the characters, but particularly between Stamets and Culber, they both have had these kind of profound experiences, and they're trying to find their way. It seems to me trying to find their way back to connecting together, but they have it's kind of this weird thing where they're trying to figure out how to connect together, but they have such a strong connection that they're able to do that, and they're willing to do that. There's never I like there's never been the like, well, you just don't understand me storming off thing, and like, oh my God, are we going to be together thing. They don't have that angst. It's like they have that anchor. They're just trying to figure out how that works now. And by the end, they figured out. They're going on vacation together, and they're going to take some time, and they're going to work on it. And that to me is kind of the important thing in Discovery, is that the characters they don't just give up on stuff. They're willing to do the work, whether it's relationships or talking with a new species or figuring out how they're going to get out of a situation. They're willing to talk about it and figure it out. They don't just give up, and they develop and learn from their past thing. I mean, Burnham is such a different character now as Captain than she was in the first season of Discovery. It's like really cool. And I don't know. It's just like with the whole thing with 10C. It's like, oh, let's go blow them up. It's like, no, we should talk, and we should figure this out, and let's do the work. That's what, some people are like, oh, they spent too many episodes trying to find out information and do all this stuff. They're putting in the work. It's like, we're not just going to go and show up and go knock, knock. It's like, while we're on the way, let's figure out a better way, an effective way to do this. Let's put in the work and make it happen. And that just, to me, was really cool this season. So, and, as Stacey Abrams says, we still have a lot of work to do. The thing that really struck me is at the very end of the episode, they did something different that I thought was extremely brilliant, and again, made a statement on the show and their world when they pulled back from Earth. Instead of the usual North-South America picture, or Europe if you're a British show, it was Africa. And I don't know that we've ever, especially on an American TV show, seen a space show Earth from that perspective, as opposed to, North America, because that's easily recognizable, right? At least to Americans.
Right.
But it was Africa. It's like, hey, here's where we all came from. And, we're all in this together. I don't know. It's just, to me, it was on many levels, it said many things, and it was like, that was really cool. That whole ending of that episode was like, I'm not going to lie, I choked up. I'm like, man, this is really good stuff, So, I don't know.
No, it's cool. I'm not knocking the show. I was just, to me, the emotional stakes were high, but then there was somewhat of a not payoff, in my opinion. I still love the episode. I still think the show is awesome. And I don't know that and like you said, I don't know that Star Trek is going to do something like that. And I also, just as an aside, I did enjoy the call out to the Yelchin spaceship as well.
Yeah,
which I thought was very sweet thing to do. For Anton, of course.
That caught me a little bit too. I was like, oh man, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really nice. And they acknowledge him. So that'll be hard, I think, actually, maybe a little bit, to find another Chekhov, because I wonder if they're holding. What's that? Or
do they write the character out in the next movie?
I'm not talking about.
Oh, you mean on Strange New Worlds?
If they do Strange New Worlds, or if they go forward with an OG Star Trek show. I mean, Chekhov didn't join the Enterprise until the second season anyway, so I guess you could not have him. But I kind of feel like you have to have him. So that'll be. I wonder what'll happen with that. But no, it was a nice call out, and I agree with you. I think that the quote unquote wokeness doesn't bother me, but it definitely was there for sure. And it was, some people would probably think it was too much or whatever. And maybe it was. If it's too much for you, that's fine. But Star Trek in the end is about hope, right? It's about what we can do together, and about what we can do if we make the right decisions, which is a lot like what Picard is doing too. They're like, here's all the shit that went wrong. You have to go back in
Yeah.
time to fix it all.
Gotta go
And
back
I also,
in time. Oh, sorry, I won't sing.
well,
Sorry.
it's funny. It's funny you sing that because this episode of Picard was directed by Leah Thompson, which I thought
I
was
know
awesome.
that
So
was great.
I was like, if somebody knows about time travel, it's Leah Thompson. So,
That's right.
or if it could have been Michael J. Fox, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
But as a total aside, I saw recently that Christopher Lloyd is going to be in Mandalorian season 3. So I'm wondering if he's
Yeah, he's guest starring in season 3 of Mandalorian. They just announced that. That's pretty cool.
People are like, will he be the voice of Grogu? I don't know. But that'd be pretty fun.
That would be awesome. Yes.
We gotta get some soup. Oh, sorry, I don't know why he's doing Doc Brown, but yeah, I like Christopher Lloyd. He's awesome, and he has a connection to Star Trek. Obviously, he was in Star Trek 3, right? So
Yeah, he was
with the original series as
real piece of work in that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. He was great. I mean, you didn't even recognize him hardly as the Klingon.
John Larroquette too, who definitely wasn't recognizable.
Larroquette, yeah. Definitely. Yeah, a lot of people have been in Star Trek that you probably don't realize. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think, was in Star Trek at one point. But anyway,
Mick
yeah,
Fleetwood.
I think Disco.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of stunt casting. So, so Star Trek is a great show. Star Trek is a great show, but not just a great show, but a great bunch of shows. And I'm looking forward to the next season of Discovery, which I'm sure there'll be one, and more about Picard. We don't need to talk about Picard too much right now because it's still going on. But this episode was pretty good. I especially liked Alison Pill's performance with her going into the mind of the Borg Queen, which I thought was pretty cool.
I like the computer playback file shit I stole from the Borg. That was pretty great.
Yeah, well, like Picard's like, whose arm is this? He's like, mine. That was
Yes. Yes.
That was great. They were both really good. I can't help but worry about Patrick Stewart in every scene. I was like, please don't fall. He seems so fragile. That poor that man. I don't know.
Guy. Well, he's old, man. I mean, give him a break. So
I know. No, I totally understand that, but I worry about him.
There's a reason why he's staying with the ship while the others go explore L.A. I mean,
well, L.A. That's right.
L.A.
They are exploring L.A.
The one thing that kind of irked me a little bit is.
So we're going to talk about Picard then? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about Picard. The one we can talk about it briefly. We'll get more into it as the episodes go. But the one thing that kind of was like really to me was, and spoilers if you haven't seen it yet, but they kill Elnor, the one guy that's not going to fit in 21st century Earth, right? So I'm like, okay, that's a little convenient.
Well, can he wear like a hat like Spock did?
Right. And so I'm just like,
Look, he's wearing a beanie to cover his ears. I'm just saying.
But then again, being Star Trek minded, I'm like, so this Watcher they find is probably going to be Elnor somehow, right? Because the Watcher obviously has future tech and all this stuff. So it's either going to be Guinan or Elnor.
And the character and he's listed in the main credits, but
yeah.
So yeah.
But I was just okay.
Yeah.
So.
No, I know, and that actually didn't occur to me that it was because he doesn't fit in with 20th century Earth. I just thought it was something to get what's her face all worked up because she's angry.
Well, it's definitely that because she kind of became a mother to him, and
it's
like, and then she's like obviously not happy with Picard. So
she's going to be reckless. Well, they've had a weird relationship anyway. I think she's just like, what? Fuck you. Well, and they're all. This is obviously a theme for the episode or for this season. Is like even the Borg Queen's like, you just pretending to have emotions. You don't have to have actual emotions. He's getting all upset about him. But that's like the theme of the show, right? Picard has put aside all of his personal life and this is the problem with what happens. You can't just forget about your emotional well-being and everything. So maybe the Watcher will end up being Picard. I don't know. Maybe it'll be Data. I don't know. Who knows? But
there you go.
It'll be something. Because Brent Spiner's in this season too, I think. But
well, he was in the trailer, and Q was handing him something, and it looked like they were in 21st century. So yeah, it probably totally could be one of the Sungs or Data or something like that. Because he's got to show up at some point this season. So
not Data, but Lore maybe. But
yeah.
Or a Borg. Maybe it's a Borg. I don't know. It's interesting. I use the word interesting a lot, I noticed, but I find it all very fun, and I enjoy anything Star Trek related, as we've talked about before. So, but again, it's hard for me not to worry about Patrick Stewart. But yes, there's a reason he stays at the ship, and that's why.
Well,
But,
I'm a sucker for I'm a sucker for time travel and alternate universe stories. So Picard is like checking all the boxes this season. I'm like, yeah, this is great.
Well, and of course that LA montage was like, oh, I used to go to all those places. I feel bad. I miss Los Angeles sometimes after moving away. I miss it a little bit. Anyway, I can always go back and visit, I guess. But yeah, I'm enjoying the show. And everyone's doing a really good job. Alison Pill in particular, I think, is killing it. So she's doing great.
So yeah, we'll talk more as the season progresses. All that, so.
But yeah, you're right. It is kind of funny that Eleanor got killed. But couldn't he just be injured and not be able to leave the ship? Why did they have to kill him?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like we got to put him in stasis to save his life or something. I'm like, I don't. Well,
there's got to be there's got to be a reason for it. There's got to be something about upping the stakes for her or for something. But you're right. Maybe he is the character they find later. I mean, who knows?
And as anybody who has watched TV for as long as we have knows, the way they did his death, he's not gone for good. You don't do a death like that for a main character and they're gone for good because they didn't spend enough time on it. You spend much more time on a character's death if they're gone from the show. So he's going to show up again in some capacity somehow. So
the other thing is, why did they get rid of what's her name, Daj?
Well, yeah, Soji. Yeah, she was in the first episode and that was it. And so, but she's still a main cast member too. So maybe she's the watcher. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Where did she go? Dodge, or Soj, or whatever her name is, Soji. Yeah, where did she go? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah,
how many episodes are there this season?
Only there was something that would show us and answer our questions. If only we could watch something that would tell us these things. Same thing with like.
Did it bother you?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Did it bother you that Rios got hit by ice? Because I kind of felt like that was a well-used plot point where I dropped my communicator, and now ice is coming in to bust me, and I'm going to get arrested because that's the one thing they said not to do. So I don't know.
Well, there's a big there's a big tradition of that in Star Trek of going back to the past and whatever ethnicity the character is getting caught up in whatever thing. I mean, it's a big thing in science fiction. So that I'm like totally okay with that. My thing is like, so now does he have a girlfriend in the past? And so what's that going to mean when they're like, well, we got to go back to the future? Is he going to be like, I think I'll stay here, or
no,
or maybe
she's going to have to die. No, she's going to have to die. That's how it works in Star Trek, right? Edith Keeler must die so the Nazis don't take over the Earth. So this girl, Rios has to kill his girlfriend,
or
the Earth to survive.
Well, maybe, or since they did the time travel back to the past in a similar vein to what they did in Star Trek 4, maybe she's like so progressive and they're helpful, and she's a loner, and they're like, well, if she stays here, she's going to get in trouble with ICE or legal problems. We should just take her with us to the future. He's got to be like, hey, I'm for the future. It'll totally play out like Star Trek 4, like they did with what's her name?
Well, yeah, they took the whale scientist. We don't have a scientist for whales in the future. You should come with us. Like, okay, we'll just take you. No one will ever notice you're gone because you're not important. No significant.
Exactly, you're not important. You can come with us. It'll be fine.
It's like Scotty giving that guy the formula for transparent aluminum. I'm sure that didn't change history at all. How do we know he didn't invent the thing, Captain? It's like, okay, that's fine, but how do we know?
Sure, he did, okay, yeah, that's
sure,
works.
Man. Whatever, Scotty. And Scotty's the smartest one, probably. So he's like, it's fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Well, I guess the thing that was funny though, they're talking about how they did that in the original series, and Picard never once mentions that they also did that in First Contact. It's like, yes, we went back in time too. Hello, but they just followed the Borg through the time.
Yeah, he specifically was talking about slingshotting around the sun, and he said Kirk and his crew did it multiple times.
Right.
So,
but they did
again. He's not going to be like. He's not going to be like, oh, Kirk went back in time, and also we did during this one time, and he's not going to recount everyone. They were talking specifically about the slingshotting, around the sun.
We followed the Borg back in time and saved the universe too, but that was in a movie, so
because in the original series they actually did that to go back and slingshot around the sun to go back in time. to gather data. It was not even like an accident. It was like, it started Captain's log. We've gone back in time
Yeah.
to the 1960s to observe blah blah blah, and it's like, so you just do that on a whim? That's kind of cool. It's like,
Right. And
but
that's
they never
because
did
that's the
anything like
episode.
that after that,
Well, they had to do
So
that because was that the pilot, the backdoor pilot they were
Gary
doing
Seven,
for
yeah,
Gary Seven?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So they just did it. Yeah, because they had to go back in time because it was the '60s, and that was a show with him with Terry
But he's
Carr
like,
too, which is funny.
yeah, he's like, Starfleet sent us back in time to
Yeah.
gather data for blah blah blah. It's like, oh, so you just casually do that, but then after that, anytime they time traveled, it was like a big deal, and like,
Right.
oh, I don't know if this is gonna work. It's like, well, that is okay.
Well,
It's
the
like,
other thing
but
is you saying with Elnor, they managed to find a way to get Jerry Ryan to get Seven without her Borg implants to walk around L.A. So they could have
right.
they could have figured out a way for Elnor too, I think. But anyway,
It's like
whatever.
they just didn't have enough story to go around, so you
Well,
know.
they didn't. They can't. Well, I wonder if COVID was a factor. It's like we can't have so many people wandering around. We have to keep everybody
Oh, that's
isolated.
yeah, that could be.
So it doesn't seem like they're ever together except one shot, but they're all kind of isolated on that shot. That's probably a comp. They probably
Well,
put
and
that in
it's
separately. But
like Raffi said,
now,
it makes a good motivator to like we got to get this fixed because our
yeah,
Elnor's dead, and if we fix this, there's a good chance that he comes back. So let's get to it and get
yeah,
this done. So it's a good motivator,
right,
but still, it's just like it couldn't have been anybody else. Okay, so
right, exactly. Well, I guess we'll see what happens.
of course, again, if only there were some more episodes where we could find out what happens. Oh wait, there are.
Well, there's only
just like
six
with
more episodes, Joe.
just like with Kirk, if only there was some kind of narrative that would explain that image that we saw. Oh wait, there is. So
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. It's all going to be fine. It's all going to work
this
out
is
fine.
this is all fun.
This all happened before, and it will all happen again. So,
Exactly.
the only other thing I wanted to mention before we go to picks is the Miss Marvel trailer, which is a new Marvel series that's coming out in June, featuring the character Miss Marvel, who's a fangirl of Captain Marvel, who ends up getting her own powers, and at least in the MCU timeline, ends up joining Captain Marvel and will play in the Marvels TV or the Marvels movie. But they had the first trailer drop for that. For the show, and I think it looks great, and it reminds me a lot of, as you and I talked about before the show when we're doing the pre-show stuff. It reminds me a lot of Scott Pilgrim. I think it's got that sort of playful vibe to it, and she seems terrific. Iman Vellani, who plays Miss Marvel, who seems like a great character who's never really done any acting before, kind of an unknown, but she seems great in the show, and the show looks really cute and fun, and I'm going to watch it. I'm sure everyone hates it, but I'm going to watch it. Oh, you probably don't hate it either. A lot
I
of
don't.
people
I'm going to
do.
watch it.
I'm sure people. It's got all the elements that will piss off people, a certain segment of the population. But that kind of thing doesn't bother me. I think the show looks cool. I'm intrigued by the series, by the trailer. It makes me more interested in the show, so I'm going to definitely watch it. So, what did you think of the trailer?
I liked it. I thought it's a lot of, it looks like a lot of fun. And it's, obviously aimed at a particular audience that maybe isn't me, but being a comic book fan, and I actually like the character in the comics, I'm definitely going to watch it. And yeah, I'm okay with something being kind of on the lighter side and not as, grim dark as everything else. So, and Marvel seems to be good at walking that fine line. I mean, some things are more serious than others, but they're okay with, not taking themselves seriously and doing some lighthearted stuff. So I'm all for it, and I think it'll be good. I'm happy that this character gets to get a spotlight, not just in a series, but also in a feature film, and I think that's really cool. I'm okay with characters and heroes that aren't like me. I'm very okay with that. I've always
Right?
been.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
reading comics, I'm like, ooh, I want to know. Marvel was especially good about that with like Black Panther and some of their other characters that weren't, straight white guys in the comics. That they not only represented them well, but it's like, I want to know about African history. I want to know about this. This is really cool. And it was great world building and gave depth to the character, but it was stuff that was interesting to me. It's like, oh, if it's someone who grew up and is exactly like me, that wasn't necessarily interesting, because it's like, well, I know what that's like. And dude, you didn't have it that bad because, my mother was worse than yours, or that kind of thing. It's like, oh, well, here's somebody that, even as a hero isn't, maybe that's why the X-Men were interesting to me, because it's like, here is someone being a hero, but because of what they are and what they represent, society isn't accepting of them as a hero and is not
definitely
being kind to them. And it's like, oh, that's, maybe it's liking the underdogs. I don't know. But that to me were the fascinating stories. So,
yeah, the other thing is there's plenty of stories about, and again, as we talked about so many times, it's basically angry white dudes who don't like this show because it's too woke or too whatever.
Right, right.
Or they changed her powers, which I understand from a production standpoint. They can't have her body morphing, and doing all that stuff. They're doing the kind of similar powers to Captain Marvel and to Photon or whatever she's going to be, Monica Rambeau. But the powers of like the big light fist, it's kind of like so it all fits together with the kind of thing they're establishing in the MCU. These kind of powers from the Power Stones, whatever. But people are going to hate the show because everyone is a minority. Everyone, they're too brown or they're too this or too Muslim or too whatever. But that's what I've always liked about Marvel too. Is like Marvel takes place in sort of quote unquote reality in a way, or the real world, like in New York, right? So
yes,
like it or not, people like this live in New York. They live in Jersey,
exactly.
Which is where the show says like this is an actual real thing. Obviously, they don't become superheroes necessarily, but people like this exist. And so the idea that none of the stories that happened feature people like this is ridiculous. Of course they are, and of course this is the kind of show that people are going to respond to negatively in some way because it's too different. It's too, fear inducing or too whatever. It's like, it's not about people that are like me and I don't like that. It's about people that I don't like or whatever. I think it looks great. And I don't really, that kind of thing doesn't bother me. I'd rather see, I hate to use the word diverse, but I'd rather see a diverse bunch of stories about a bunch of different people and their experiences, because if I want to watch shows about white dudes, there's plenty of those, I've got those already. So let's branch out a bit. The other thing I wanted to mention about Disney Plus is now all the Netflix shows are on Disney Plus, and that's cool too, because that means your favorite word, Joe, they're all canon, right? So
although some people are saying, oh no, they're keeping them segregated from the MCU stuff, so they're not part of canon. I'm like, oh, Jesus, really? Okay.
Well, they're even listed on Disney Plus now, along with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything in the same kind of look. Here's all the Marvel shows.
Right.
But it sounds like they're developing a new Charlie Cox show with Daredevil. It sounds like they're developing a few other things. But when I logged into Disney Plus the other day after this happened, after these shows went live, I had to like change my my family settings and agree to get all the content, because God forbid, a kid watches. I don't want a kid to watch Daredevil, but it's like, because it's a lot of violence and stuff. But it's just funny how Disney is like having it both ways now. It's like, well, we're a family friendly thing, but we're also going to have this stuff, which I think is good. But you have to do like a special thing to allow you to access all content. And now they have better parental controls on it for kids.
And that's because a bunch of parents were up in arms. They're like, oh, I can't believe you're going to have these shows on this service. And
it's Disney being practical to protect their brand. Their brand is family friendly shit. Not shit, but you know what I mean? Family friendly stuff. And people having sex and punching people repeatedly in the face, and a lot of it, and like the Punisher is not family friendly. Let's be honest. He's like a vigilante who kills people. Yeah. But that show's on there too, and so is unfortunately, Iron Fist. But that's fine. And Iron Fist is there too. But it's not a quality measurement. It's a all the shows are awful kind of thing. But
yes.
But I don't want 10-year-olds watching the Punisher. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so I have no problem with them protecting kids from that kind of stuff, or trying to put stuff in place for that, and protecting their Disney brand. But obviously it means that Disney Plus and Disney in general is open to the idea of more adult-oriented stuff, which means I'm more hopeful of an R-rated an R-rated Daredevil film, not Daredevil, Deadpool film, and maybe an R-rated Daredevil film too. But
Well,
they're
I mean,
more
that's
willing
what
to do that kind of stuff.
I think that is what you're alluding to, influence from Marvel, because Moon Knight, Kevin Feige saying, listen, this is going to be pretty brutal, and we're not holding back. And then again, they just announced Sean Levy is directing the next Deadpool movie, and they've said all along, if we do another Deadpool, we're gonna make sure it's in line with the other two. We're not gonna water it down or anything. So
you just did the same thing I did. You said Daredevil.
I know, I did. I know.
Sorry about that.
So I think, in a way, kind of bringing those Netflix Marvel shows to Disney Plus is kind of setting the stage for that.
Right.
Is hey, listen, we are going to expand in this. We're still going to do the family friendly and all this stuff, but we're also expanding in this other area because this franchise has those elements, and they're really good stories, and there is an audience for them. It may not be you with your 8-year-old, and that's fine. But, we do have the audience for it. We do have people that want to see these stories. And so we're not going to just stop those or get rid of those because of our, your perception of us. So kudos to Disney for that. I think
right, exactly. And also, they're already paid for. So why not share them? Because we need content. We don't have to spend a lot of money on them. And controversy is good. But that's it's a step in the right direction for sure. So should we go to picks now, or
we should do some picks? Yes, let's do some picks.
Okay, I have to think of one. So you go first.
All right, I'll go first. So I know I've probably picked this years ago on our show, but I'm gonna pick it again, and it goes right into the conversation we just had. I'm going to pick the Daredevil TV series only because I've been rewatching it lately, because now it's available on something that I don't have to pay extra for. But I've been revisiting it, and it just really is such a good show. If they had only done Daredevil on the Netflix and not had done the others, I would have been happy. And as we've talked before, I'm a huge fan of long takes, and they feature one in every season that kind of outdoes the one in previous season. It
outdoes it.
So, if they finally in the third season, they had this whole thing that was like a 15-minute take that goes through this prison fight that was just amazing. And I know it was a lot of work, and they did it many, many, many times, but it just I'm a huge fan of that kind of filming, and the fact they upped the ante each season for it. I'm like, man, if this had gone on, it would have been like season 5 would have been just like, here's a whole episode, this one take, right? So but other than that, it isn't just the technical thing. I just liked the storylines from Daredevil that they pulled from. The acting was fantastic. They had great actors in the roles. And it was just a well done show. I was disappointed it ended when it did, although now it sounds like there's the possibility it may continue in some form. I don't know if those are just rumors or if there's something actually concrete behind it. But as we've discussed before, you don't have Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio make appearances in things without paying that off later or intending to do something with that. And Marvel isn't really like that.
So my pick this week continues on with my pick from last week about sketching and drawing. I'm drawing a lot more and painting and stuff again. My pick is a set of watercolor paints from a company called Windsor Newton. So it's a set of watercolors. It's the Cotman version, which is sort of more their student version. So it's not super expensive. But it comes with 12 colors, the sort of basic colors you want to get when you're starting off with. And with those, you can mix. It's like a warm and cool version of all the primary colors, basically, of red and yellow and blue. So you can take those and you can mix all your other colors that you'd ever need in your palette and do your painting. I'm doing more stuff where I will draw something like if you go outside and sketch something outside a building or whatever, and then I just sort of paint in parts of it. I mean, I don't paint in every little detail. It's more abstract in a way because you're sketching it. It's not like it's a super
Yeah.
detailed drawing sometimes. But these watercolors are great. I mean, basically, that's what I love about watercolor in general is that you can spray a little water on the palette, and it's got these little things where all the paint is. You spray some water on it and get them all activated, and you just paint with them, and then they dry up again, and you just reactivate them again. And that's the great thing about watercolor. That's why it's great for travel and for being on the road and being outside and stuff, because it's not messy. If you do get it on something, you just use water to get rid of it, right? So it's great. And I'm really having a lot of fun with it. So if you want to start off with just like a set of watercolors, they make a couple of different ones with fewer colors, but I got this one because it has like 12 colors.
Nice.
They call it the blue box. So that's my pick. It's the Windsor Newton blue box watercolor palette set. So
Cool.
anyway,
Excellent.
yeah, I'm really enjoying the sketching. I've always drawn since I was a kid, and I painted quite a bit, and then that sort of led into photography because it was all about lights, figuring out lighting and all that stuff. But if you ever want to learn anything about lighting, you can always look at old paintings because those guys knew their shit about lighting.
They did.
And where,
Yes.
Where light comes from and shadow and all this stuff. And the thing that's fun about sketching is it teaches you about, it's like a black and white thing. It teaches you about, adding sort of a little bit of volume and texture over here for the shadow. Where does the light come from? What's the source? And here's the shadows. And here's how do you depict that in a 2D medium for one thing? And also how do you do it with just pen and paper?
Right.
Because a lot of times I won't even pencil. A lot of times I'll just use a pen and I'll sketch in, sort of the abstract thing that I'm looking for, the shapes. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then if you put a little watercolor paint on it, it looks cool. I think it's fun. And so it's just one of those things where it makes it's yet another thing to distract you from the world, maybe. And so while you're sketching and painting or reading your book or recording a podcast or playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever it is that you do to sort of pass the time, it gets you to focus on a creative thing that takes you away from other things. And I can do it for like a couple of hours and not even and look up and go, oh shit, I've been painting for an hour. That's awesome. And you don't think about anything else but being creative. And that's a super
3D printing. That's for me. Yeah. So.
Exactly. It's a super great thing to be able to do for your mind and your sort of demeanor and your whatever. So anyway, it's been super helpful and fun. And I'm really enjoying it. And I have a few books to pick over the next couple of months and a lot of stuff that's all going to kind of follow. It's going to be a theme for the next few episodes, at least for me. So
I like it.
Anyway, so find
Good
the Flickcast. Yeah, thank you. Find the Flickcast at Apple and Spotify and wherever you find podcasts. Joe is on the socials at What Joe Writes, and I am at Chris Yu, and then Ulrich Picks at Instagram. And of course, the Flickcast is at The Flickcast. But if you ever need more links, it's at linktr.ee/the Flickcast if you want to find all the other stuff. I mean, if you really want to find that, you can go to our Twitter or our Instagram, and it has that link, and that takes you to every other place where the show is, YouTube and all that stuff. Yeah, find it on YouTube. And then also we're doing a collaboration with Whiskey and Waffles on Discord, which you can check out. You can interact with us. And we've been getting some good comments, like on Facebook. We had a couple of Facebook comments the other day. Thank you for that. It's fun to talk to people who listen to the show and find what we say sort of interesting, and that's cool. We appreciate that. And ratings are helpful. Thank you for rating the show and reviewing the show, but even rating is fine. And all the other things that I say at the end, that's all the stuff I say at the end of the episode. So you've probably heard it before. Cool. Anything else, Joe?
I think that's probably
For Joe
it.
Dilworth, I'm Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thanks so much for listening.